Walk with History today is at the Battle of Little Bighorn on the Crow Reservation in Montana. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on with why is the Lakota, the Sioux, and the Cheyenne here? Why are they encroaching on Crow Reservation? And so the Army is coming in to defend the Crow Reservation. What's happening at this point? This is 1876, 1874, gold is found in the Black Hills. Custer is a part of that. He goes out to that expedition when gold is first found. That land has been given to the Sioux. That's part of the Treaty of Fort Laramie, and that's their land. But because gold is found there and people are coming out to make their fortunes, we talked about Wild Bill Hickok out in Deadwood to make his fortune, the military doesn't do anything to really stop people. And instead of that being one big reservation, they make it 6 mini reservations and basically take back the Black Hills. Although the Sioux don't want to give back, and the Lakota don't want to give back the Black Hills. So they say no, they don't even take the money today for it. And so they fight and they start to move westerly into this Crow territory. And you got Sitting Bull, you got Crazy Horse, who are seeing visions and believing that they need to fight. And so the Crow, I wouldn't say are happy here, but they're left alone and they want to be left alone. So when the Lakota and the Cheyenne and the Sioux are coming in this direction, this is Custer's chance, because he's in charge of the 7th Calvary, to kind of push them back to where they need to go on their reservations. You'll know today Standing Rock is one of those reservations, one of those 6 reservations that have been made in South Dakota. But this is where they make their last stand because it's so many of them, and Custer underestimates how many people are actually out here and willing to fight to not go to those 6 reservations, and also fighting for their Black Hills, because that's what they were told that was supposed to be theirs in the first place. The dark trees are kind of down here. That's the Bighorn River, and this is where you get the name, right? Little Bighorn. So that's the Bighorn River. So on June 25th, 1876, approximately 7,000 Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, including 2,000 warriors are encamped at the Little Bighorn River because they hear there's a big antelope herd there. So good hunting, of course. And so that's why when Custer hears they're out here, he's like, this will be a great chance to just get everybody and move them back where they need to go onto the reservation. Sitting Bull is part of this group, and Sitting Bull is, if you remember, is part of this huge resistance, and he will be, even in the aftermath. He will eventually surrender in the years that follow after this battle. This will be the last great battle of the Sioux Wars. This will be the last great American Indian victory. One of my favorite stories from the Battle of Little Bighorn is Buffalo Calf Woman, also known as Buffalo Calf Road Woman. Right before this battle, there's a Battle of Rosebud that happens to the south of here, kind of a precursor to this battle. And in the Battle of Rosebud, her brother is knocked off his horse. And Buffalo Calf Woman rides out and saves her brother. And the battlefield kind of pauses for a moment and watches her do this, because here is a tough, young warrior woman helping another tough young warrior male. who happens to be her brother. So in the Battle of Little Bighorn, she strikes again. She's a Cheyenne, and she's credited by the Cheyenne people through the oral history, which is where we get a lot of the history of what happened with Custer, because no one survives from the army side to tell their stories. She is the one who knocks Custer off his horse. About Custer before. We've talked about Custer at Appomattox, right? Because Custer is the one who receives the surrender flag for the Civil War. He's the one who takes the initial orders of surrender from the Civil War. He's not present in Appomattox Courthouse when Grant and Lee meet, but he is there for the entire surrender of the Civil War. So he's made his name already through the Civil War, and that's why he's so notorious falling here during the Sioux Wars. Said Custer is riding with his whole troop, the whole 7th Cavalry, when he decides to peel off and have Reno attack from the front and attack the entire village, but not realizing how many people are there. They don't know that this is such a huge encampment of Lakota, Sioux, Cheyenne. He also sends off another group with Lieutenant Calhoun to go down like a little ravine. And so he's even more broken away when his 40 men meet at the top of Last Down Hill and encounter the warriors from that entire village. No one really knows exactly what Custer was thinking. Everything is kind of like conjured and conjectured by historians, but that's what they believe was happening. He thought Reno would attack from the front, Custer is going to come from the rear. He had another detachment kind of come down the middle, and then Custer would pick up all the people who were retreating in the back. That's kind of the idea of what's happening here, but it doesn't work out that way because that's not how the American Indians fight. His cavalry start to fall, and there is about 40 men left here, and there's about 50 markers, so it's not accurate where these markers are, and even where Custer's stone is not accurate. His body was found pretty much where the big obelisk is. But what I found very interesting is Crazy Horse will ride up before Custer is killed. When these two groups, you have Custer's group here and you have Calhoun's group over here, Crazy Horse will ride up in between them, a lot like George Washington in a way, and rally everybody. And he kind of taunts both sides, and they're firing at him because it's Crazy Horse, and he doesn't get hit at all by any bullets. And so you have this, like, the American Indians are so inspired by their leader coming out, riding out, rallying everybody, not getting hit by any bullets, that this is when these group of young warriors come up and fight and are really ready to die for their leader, Crazy Horse. So if you can just imagine Crazy Horse coming up from where the trees are, up this ravine, and riding back and forth, rallying everybody over into this area here where Custer's last stand was made. So you see the fenced area is where Custer is found with his men, and that's where approximately 41 men will shoot their horses and use them as breastworks. So when you hear breastworks, it means you're using something to protect basically your breast. Like we've talked about earthworks before. That is something very common in the West when you feel like this is your last chance of survival. You're gonna kill your horse, because if you don't live, who needs your horse anyway? So you kill your horse and you use that as protection. So the 41 men will shoot their horses for breastworks and make a stand. Here's the 7th Calvary Horse Cemetery. And remember when I talked about how the horses were shot and used as cover, and the horses were later buried here. And here are these red markers we had talked about. They had put these up later because the American Indian warriors are almost immediately removed from the battlefield and ceremoniously buried and given their funerals. But this is in response to the white markers for the Army. They do these red markers for the American Indians. So you see they have their native name, then the translation. And you can see this is not far from the Last Stand Hill, so you can imagine they're encircling this hill here. So this is the Indian Memorial here. Again, it's a full and circle. Peace through unity, power through unity. And as you can see, if you look through the notch, you look right up at the memorial on Last Stand Hill. So this talks about Custer smoking a peace pipe with a Cheyenne, saying that he would never kill another Cheyenne in 1869. So this battle happens 7 years later. And so it says, if you break your promise, you and your soldiers will go to dust like this. And I just love, this is like probably some kind of spirit tree leaving a cloth in remembrance of the battle that took place here. When the bodies are originally found here, they're covered in blankets and buried shallow and covered in rocks. They come to take the bodies and to bury them in various locations. And really animals had gotten to the graves and bones are mostly found. And even with Custer, it's just a pile of bones that are buried at West Point. There you can see the Indian Memorial a little bit better. Again, right across from the memorial on Last Stand Hill, which is right up the hill from where they have the markers from Last Stand Hill, but they believe he was here at high ground, the highest ground, when he was killed. As I leave the Battle of Little Bighorn, we walk by the markers here on Last Stand Hill. I stand in awe of what these American Indian fighters did. I stand in awe of Custer and his men and what they did for their last stand. But here are two groups meeting. You know, each of them feel righteous in what they're doing. Each of them are willing to die for what they believe. And each of them are fighting to the death. You know, even the Army will lose the battle this day. In essence, the American Indians will lose the war and lose everything. But this is their moment, their last stand. They actually win. And in this moment here, they fight. They fight, and they're willing to die for what they believe in their way of life. And it's such a part of American history that it's important to bring it to you, and it's important to be here today. I hope you enjoyed this walk with history. I hope you learned something. And if you ever get out of here to the Crow Reservation and able to visit the Battle of Greasy Grass, the Battle of Little Bighorn, it's waiting here for you. On to my next walk with history.